hello to all our customers in South Africa and to the Pan Macmillan team. I'm Fiona MacDonald, Group Export Sales Director for Walker Books and Candlewick Press. And now I'm going to present our highlights for the second half of this year. So starting off with picture books, Catch That Chicken, now in paperback. So this is another joyful and humorous picture book from Atinike set in Nigeria. It features Lammy, who's the best chicken catcher in the village. But when she falls from the baobab tree and twists her ankle, she has to find an alternative method of catching those chickens. So both author and illustrator were born in West Africa, and Angela captures perfectly the energy and beauty of the West African setting in her art. Next we have When We Grow Up. This is non-fiction, new in paperback, and it's a preschool first book of jobs. It has a diverse range of characters doing a range of jobs from dancer and vet to mechanic and computer coder. It challenges stereotypes with its positive and inclusive message, and it's an excellent way of starting conversations with young children about their futures. The Wooloo's Big Adventure in paperback. This is a story about a family of adorable Wooloos, which are a kind of elephant, mouse, pangolin hybrid. It has a gentle eco message about protecting the natural world. Anushka Alapuz is a Spanish author, illustrator, and a rising star. Her previous books included That Fruit Is Mine and The Little Green Donkey, and she has been highly commended and shortlisted for a number of awards. Her art has been exhibited at Bologna. Making Friends, a book about first friendships. This is non-fiction for children aged 3 and upwards. In this story, we meet two children making friends for the first time. This book provides the perfect way of talking to very young children about friendship and everything that goes with it, from meeting new people to celebrating differences and standing up for one another. It offers positive examples and mindful tips. Children's mental health is a big topic of conversation. This is a very helpful tool to share with children struggling with loneliness and interpersonal relationships, especially as they return to school after lockdown. The author, Amanda McCarty, has studied child development and worked as an editor at Walker Books. The text has been further vetted by a child therapist. Colleen Lamour is a new illustrator to Walker and was awarded an MA in Children's Book Illustration at the prestigious Cambridge School of Art. Jabari Tries in paperback. So this is the second picture book featuring Jabari. In this story, he's trying to make a flying machine that will soar across the yard. And eventually, with perseverance and by accepting help from others, he manages to succeed. So it's a story with a STEM-focused subject and the message of problem solving, patience, and working along with others. Jabari Jumps has sold 125,000 copies. Gustavo the Shy Ghost. So this is a picture book with a spooky theme that's also about being shy. Flavia is a Mexican author illustrator, and her bold, bright art encapsulates the colour, energy and liveliness of her culture. Sticky McStick. This is a very personal picture book written by Michael Rosen, which came out of his experience of having COVID-19. As you may know, Michael was in intensive care for 47 days, seriously ill. As part of his recovery, he had to learn to walk again, and he named his walking stick Sticky McStick. So this is a story of perseverance and hope, and sits alongside Michael's very personal book, The Sad Book, which is about losing his son to meningitis. Tony Ross is the artist and is best known for his illustrations of the Roald Dahl books. Wally Santa's Spotlight Search. So the Spotlight Search is back with a fabulous festive edition. There are 6 scenes buzzing with busy Santas. It includes the ingenious Spotlight Searchlight wand, which lights up the scenes without batteries being required. As well as being great fun, Wally books can help reluctant readers get interested in books. They help children's concentration, and they're great for sharing. Wally has now clocked up sales of 75 million copies worldwide. Right, Unleash Your Creative Monster. So this is a non-fiction title now in paperback, which is an inspirational writing guide for children aged 9+. It comes with top tips on getting your story started and teaches essential skills for storytellers. Andy Jones is an author and creative director for an advertising agency. Olaf Falafel is a surrealist stand-up comedian and illustrator. Moving on to middle grade fiction and non-fiction. So starting with Stink and the Hairy Scary Spider. This is the 12th book in this funny and popular series for age 7+. In this book, Stink learns to overcome his fear of spiders when a tarantula goes on the loose. Children learn some arachnid facts along the way. Judy Moody and the Stink books are 2 of our heritage brands and continue to be hugely popular worldwide. Saving Celeste. So this is a beautifully told parable for age 9+ set in a future industrialized world. The world is run by industry and the only thing that matters is buy, buy, buy. People live in crowded cities where cars are stacked vertically and homes and shopping centres run miles high into the sky. Celeste lives in Tower 330, barely visible in a fog of fumes. On her first day at school, she makes a friend, but then she doesn't return because her blood has become as polluted as the seas and rivers, her lungs as contaminated as the sky. So the boy battles the forces of industry to try and save her, but will there be time for Celeste and the planet to recover? It's the author's call to save our planet, an incredibly moving and powerful story about climate change. Timothée de Fontbelle is a French writer who published Toby Alone many years ago. He's won many awards and is also a much admired playwright. Sarah Ardizoni, the translator, is a winner of the Marsh Award, which is given to books in translation, and it has a really beautiful cover, as you can see. So next we have The Chime Seekers. So this is another brilliant middle grade title from the Costa Prize shortlisted Ross Montgomery, who is the author of Midnight Guardians. It's a fantasy adventure about sibling rivalry, courage, and the magic that hides in the cracks. On All Hallows Day, when the divide between the real and fairy world is at its thinnest, an evil fairy steals Yanni's baby sister and swaps her with a changeling, and Yanni is swept into a dangerous race against time to get her back. The story has many elements of classic fairy tales, such as tackling seemingly impossible dark magic tasks. It has a wonderful array of fairy tale characters and an immersive fantasy world. Frankenstiltskin, Fairy Tales Gone Bad. This is the second story in a deliciously dark and funny 3-part series of twisted classics, following on from Zombierella, the first book. Frankenstein meets Rumpelstiltskin is about a powerful king, a girl unafraid to stand up for her beliefs, and a monstrous little creature with magic and greed in his bones. It's written in rhyme by the poet Joseph Coelho, which makes the text much more accessible and easier to read. It has funny illustrations by Freya Hartus, who's a winner of the Roald Dahl Funny Prize. And book 3 is coming October 2022, and it's going to be called Creeping Beauty. Next we have the Beatrice Prophecy. So it's a real event to have a brand new Kate DiCamillo novel. She's one of the most talented authors writing for children today and is loved by adults and children alike. And this is a first pairing of a Newbery and Caldecott medalist. So we have Kate, who is a twice winner of the Newbery Medal and a Newbery Honour, and the illustrator Sophie Blackall, who's a Caldecott winner. Those, I'm sure you'll know, are the two most important awards for children in America. And this is typical of Kate's stories. It stars an animal and a child who is alone for one reason or another. It has an ancient setting. It's a historical fantasy in the vein of her other books, Tale of Despereaux, pardon me, and The Magician's Elephant. It has an eclectic cast of characters. There's Beatrice, who can remember nothing about herself except her name, and who can read and write in a time when only men were allowed to. There's a hilarious demon goat called Answellica, who hates everybody except Beatrice. There's a robber with a knife between his teeth, a boy called Jack Dory, who is an orphan, but whose granny, reincarnated as a bee, follows him everywhere. There's a monk whose job it is to illuminate manuscripts, and a laughing, long-haired old man who was once a king. They go on a perilous journey. There's a prophecy that a girl will claim the throne of the king. So all the ingredients to make a marvelous story. It has elements of traditional stories and fairy tales. It's a meditation on fate, love, and the power of words, and has the makings of a classic. It's a strongly feminist book, and it's about the power of reading and story. Skywake Invasion. So this is the first in a middle grade sci-fi adventure trilogy for the gaming generation. 15-year-old girl called Casey is the lead character. She becomes obsessed with playing a game called Skywake, which is invented by aliens as a training tool. So what they think is a game turns out to be a real war against an evil terrestrial race. So it's really good to have a gaming book with a girl as the main character, because quite often it's boys. The author, Jamie Russell, is a screenwriter, film critic, and of course a gamer himself. Shadowghast. So this is the third Eerie-on-Sea mystery from master storyteller Thomas Taylor. On the eve of ghastly night, a hypnotic stage magician checks into Eerie-on-Sea's Grand Nautilus Hotel. She's arrived with her entourage to put on a show, and she claims to be related to Herbie Lemon. Callistra's act is so shadowy and strange that Herbie's friend Violet wonders if dark forces are at work, but Herbie won't hear a word said against his new relation. Meanwhile, folk are disappearing from the town and no one knows why. There is an eerie legend that goes back to the dawn of time about a creature made of darkness that devours the shadows of the living. Could the Shadowghast have really returned? So Thomas Taylor has created this brilliantly imagined seaside world with an eccentric and magical cast of characters. His first title in this series was Malamander, and this was Waterstone's Book of the Month, which is a massive deal in the UK. And we've had really good support for these books in South Africa, so thank you. Next we have, let's talk about sex. So this is non-fiction for age 10 plus. It's a 25-year-old classic that explains about sex in a frank, open and accessible way. And now it's been updated to include internet safety, sexual harassment and birth control. And we've sold 1 million copies of this book. So moving on to young adult titles. Non-fiction. Sex Ed, an inclusive teenage guide to sex and relationships. This positive, practical and empowering guide tackles sex and relationships in an inclusive and non-judgmental way. It's written and illustrated by the award-winning team at the School of Sexuality Education, who deliver expert workshops in UK schools. There is advice, reliable information and reassurance on all the key topics: consent and healthy relationships, sex and sexuality, puberty and periods, mental health and contraception, porn and sexting. This book is perfectly pitched for teenagers and a brilliant tool for their parents, carers and teachers, answering frequently asked questions and busting popular myths. It brings sex education into the 21st century. Green Rising by Lauren James. This is a climate change YA thriller set in a near-future world. Gabby, Theo and Hester have grown up knowing that Earth is doomed. The acceleration of climate change means that the planet will soon be uninhabitable, and while those who are rich enough can escape to Mars, the rest of the population will be left to their fate. But in the year that the ice caps finally melt, teenagers around the world begin developing strange powers, the ability to grow plants with their minds. The only hope for reversing climate change seems to lie with these green fingers, but there are plenty of profit-hungry organisations who want to use them for their own ends, and not everyone would like to see Earth saved. In a time of widespread corruption and greed, can 3 teenagers pull off the ultimate heist and bring about a green rising? So, all Lauren's stories are based on science. She carried out a lot of research at university into cutting-edge climate technology and used that in the book, combined with space travel billionaires and oil tycoons. The story revolves around a romance, like most of her books. It's set in a world similar to our own to show the disasters on the horizon, but it does have hope. Many other climate change books are dystopian, so Lauren wanted to move away from this. Her previous books have been shortlisted for the YA Book Prize and the STEAM Award. Roxy. So this is a dark, taut and chilling take on the opioid epidemic. Isaac is slowly falling down the dark abyss of addiction. Ivy is picking herself up after years of partying and self-medicating. And Roxy, the god of painkillers, sees it all. As we know, Neil Shusterman doesn't shy away from challenging and difficult subjects, and this is another highly topical tale from a master storyteller and his son. Neil is a New York Times best-selling author. And finally, a non-fiction title, Be Resilient: How to Build a Strong Teenage Mind for Tough Times. So this is the essential teenage guide to building resilience for challenging times from award-winning well-being expert Nicola Morgan, author of the best-selling Blame My Brain and The Teenage Guide to Stress. Some events in life will always be out of our control, whether it's a global pandemic or a traumatic event at home. But Be Resilient shows that the power to cope is in our hands. Discover how to develop the skill of mental resilience in this fascinating guide from award-winning author and teenage brain expert Nicola Morgan. From building a support network to building optimism, find practical, positive advice for preparing for, coping with, and bouncing back from the toughest of times. Authoritative, God, I can't say that word, and backed by the latest science, this is a reassuring companion for teenagers everywhere. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you all very much for watching.